Hi, this is a video update with lots of news. Most of it good, which makes a change. It is Saturday, the 9th of September. So I've just had chemotherapy cycle number 24. I'm very much suffering from it now. So I have chemotherapy every 2 weeks, and it's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then the Friday I kind of sometimes feel bad, sometimes not so bad, and then the side effects really hit Saturday, Sunday, and hopefully finished by Monday. I found out the reason for that actually. I talked to my immunotherapist about this, and he said it's not that there's some kind of delayed side effect. The side effects should start immediately, but when I'm having the chemotherapy, the chemo nurses give me a whole series of drips, and one of them that they give me early on contains like an anti-vomit thing to stop me feeling sick and stop me being sick, but it also contains a lot of steroids to kind of pump me up and make me feel good. And that basically, the effect of that for most people is going to last 2 or 3 days, and then that's why the side effects kick in afterwards. It's not that the side effects are kind of a delayed action sort of thing. A little bit of quite sad news, really. A Japanese guy who has the same sort of situation as me died earlier this week. And he was a very prolific blogger. He was blogging very kind of openly and honestly about his situation. He was being kept alive by the same kind of immunotherapy as I have, I think, but also the massive surgeries. He had these big brutal surgeries called cytoreductive surgery to try and scrape out the cancer. Basically, the surgeon literally scrapes the membranes off the organs. Very unpleasant, but he lasted a good few years with that. Yeah, very, very sad to see him. To hear of his death, obviously, but it's really good people blogging about this kind of stuff and people talking about this kind of stuff because cancer's often described as a violent disease, and I think that's a very accurate description. It's not something where you kind of die peacefully. Generally, especially if you're not getting medical treatment. This is why people like me are so upset when we hear this nonsense about dying a natural death, etc. Utter bullshit. I spend a lot of time with oncologists and doctors and immunotherapists who basically, and the chemo nurses who see the patients die and they know what it's like. And I hate chemotherapy. I speak out very strongly about how terrible chemotherapy is, and yet, in the vast majority of cases, chemotherapy is gonna massively help. It's going to help people by improving the quality of life, especially in the last little bit of life. For people whose cancer is found in early stages, it's actually going to get rid of the cancer, and the cancer is not going to come back, and that person will have CT scans every 3 months and lots of blood tests, and after a few years their scans might be every 6 months, even every 12 months, and some of those people are going to reach a point where the oncologist says, we'll just do a scan every couple of years because your risk of the cancer coming back is not very high. So chemotherapy absolutely does cure cancer for some people. And yeah, it absolutely does extend life for loads and loads and loads and loads of people. The natural death from cancer is not a pleasant, nice death at all, regardless of what cancer you have. So, those people who who talk about the chemo conspiracy and all this stuff. They have no idea what they're talking about, and I sadly do, because also had a family member, my mother-in-law, watched her die of cancer over a 6-month period, which was very, very unpleasant. So good news, all the good news. So I've got a full body CT scan coming up next week. I am very, very frightened about it, because it's the scan of all my body to look at, has the cancer started growing. So far every time I have a scan, it shows the cancer shrinking, which is incredible, really. Basically, if the tumours were growing slowly, that would and not spreading, that would be considered a good result. If the tumours are not growing, that's cause for quite a big celebration. In my case, the tumours have been shrinking, which from the discussions I've had with doctors, both kind of as a patient and also talking to doctors I know who are sort of speaking off the record, that's due to the fact that I'm having 6 treatments for cancer, not 1 or 2, and I'm getting some of the best treatment available in the world, because Japan is sort of a world leader in cancer care. I should probably do a video to explain that in depth, because it's very, very interesting, and quite different from how you might think cancer treatment works. So CT scan is next week. Now in Japan we can typically have the CT scan and then the same day see the oncologist and get the results. So we don't need to wait for it to go to a team meeting. Unfortunately, because of scheduling this time, I couldn't get to see my oncologist after the scan, so I won't see him until the following week. So I'll have a sort of a horrible week of waiting for the results. But that's okay. It's obviously it's possible the scan might show that the tumours have spread to my spine or lungs, which would be horrific. Hopefully the tumours are either growing slowly or not growing at all. It would be kind of miraculous. Well, no, I shouldn't use the word miraculous at all. It would be very, very good if they're actually shrinking, and certainly not a miracle, but it would be down to my incredible doctors and the chemo nurses as well, because one of the reasons that Japan gets such good outcomes from cancer treatment is the protocols that the chemo nurses follow, and just how well they do it, really. It really does make a big difference, which I'll explain in another video. CT scan next week on Tuesday, but I won't have the following results. Won't have the results until the following Tuesday. So it's the middle of September. At the moment, as in today, I've just been basically sleeping all day. Sleeping with chemo is such a strange thing, because when you wake up, you're not refreshed like you've had a sleep. You're just as tired. No one really knows why that is. So chemotherapy-induced fatigue, as it's called, doesn't respond to rest. Most generally with fatigue, have a rest and you feel okay afterwards. Not so when it's induced by chemotherapy. But some kind of good news. So a really big thing is the donations are still coming in, which I'm so incredibly grateful for. I'm pretty convinced, based on the discussions I've had with oncologists and immunotherapists and research scientists, and doctors who who are kind of personal friends or friends of the family. I am convinced that if I was in England, I wouldn't be alive at this stage, because I would basically just be on chemotherapy. In England, there are some molecular targeted therapies available on the national healthcare system, but the two that are available, I got when I had them in Japan, I got a terrible skin rash. It looked like maybe like if you've seen those photos of acid attack victims recently, kind of like that, big kind of yellow crust over my face, all over my body, absolute agony. And because this is Japan, I had some medicines to try and alleviate the side effects. They didn't work. The oncologist said, well, you should stop taking this. We have an alternative called Avastin. Now in England, Avastin is not really available on the NHS. It's available in very, very rare situations. The doctors have to fight for it. So, it would have been, have these medicines that give you the horrific side effects or don't have anything. So, yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that I wouldn't be alive now if I'd stayed in England for care. Maybe an interesting question is, would I, if I had just standard care in Japan, would I be alive now? Possibly yes. Although I do not believe I would be in this good condition. I think that the fact that I'm having 6 different therapies, and particularly I'm having these 2 kinds of immunotherapy, that's really responsible for, the fact that I'm in such good condition. The only really bad thing about my quality of life, other than having to have chemo every 2 weeks, is that I've got a hole in my stomach, and there's what's called a stoma, Japanese pronunciation is probably stoma, and I've got a colostomy bag, which I find frustrating and horrible and annoying, but is very minor in the grand scheme of things. To be, I'm alive and walking around and enjoying my life a lot. And absolutely, the quality of life, a lot of that I believe is down to the immunotherapy, and quality of life is important for 2 reasons. And there's a reason everyone thinks, which is you can enjoy your life, but when you have terminal cancer, there's a far more important reason, I think, which is that I am fit enough to have more treatment. This is a really, really big thing. I don't hear a lot of doctors talking about this. I don't hear oncologists talking about this, but it's a massive thing. If some miraculous treatment comes out in America in the next few months, which it's actually quite likely to do, I could theoretically get on a plane, go over to the US and have a treatment, one of these miraculous treatments. We've just seen last week, the Food and Drug Administration gave approval for a treatment called CAR T-cell, which is similar to the kind of treatment I have actually, except it uses T cells, mine uses NK cells. But they've approved this miraculous cancer treatment now only for a small percentage of cancer patients. It's currently priced at $500,000. But the point is, with these kind of treatments like immunotherapy and with these molecular targeted therapies, the patients can be in a good physical condition and potentially have other treatments. That's a massive thing, and people are not talking about that enough, I think. Another thing that I'm going to now start emphasizing every single video I do, and please write a comment if I forget to do this, is immunotherapy has a memory effect for your immune system. So yes, immunotherapy is designed to attack the cancers, attack those cancerous cells, but there is also what's called a memory effect. So in the case of my NK cell immunotherapy, when the cells are put back in my body with the drip, they're attacking the cancer cells, and naturally, after they've attacked a certain number of cancer cells, they're going to die, and also the other ones will just die naturally in about a 24-hour period, just how your immune system works. But there is a strong memory effect. So when patients have had their immune system monitored for the months following that, it's been found that there are elevated levels. So there's like more NK cells in the body, so that the body has kind of realized it needs to be making more. And also the NK cell activity is higher. So the white blood cells are actually being used, attacking the cancer. So that's why immunotherapy is such an important thing. And that's why it is utterly ridiculous that immunotherapy is all focused on people with terminal cancer. Like, it's great for people like me, but immunotherapy is what you should get at stage 0 cancer. If you have the tests and they're like, oh, you've got this tumor, it's not cancerous yet, but we think it might turn into cancer, we're going to be monitoring you, that's the time when you should be getting this immunotherapy to stop these tumors turning cancerous. And it's this is, I don't want to get too technical, but a lot of people would say, well, immunotherapy has not been proven in robust double-blind trials. Now, a double-blind trial is a trial where the patient doesn't know if they're getting the real treatment or the placebo, and the people giving the treatment don't know which one it is. So the people giving the treatment, let's say it's a drip, it doesn't say on the drip whether it's placebo, like just a saline drip, or whether it's got the immunotherapy in. It's just got some kind of code, and that's all being tracked by the people doing the trial. For immunotherapy, it's incredibly difficult to do these kind of trials because the medicines have to be made per patient. Like my immunotherapy medicine is just for me. It's made with my blood. That's one of the reasons why there's no kind of allergic reaction. My body doesn't kind of reject it. It's also very difficult to track the results of immunotherapy medicines because, well, first of all, it's believed that they have a very, very strong protective effect. So for people without terminal cancer, you'd need to be running the trials for years and years and years. And then you can say, look, we did this trial on all these people with stage 2 and stage 3 colon cancer. 5 years later, it hasn't come back in 80% of the patients. We'd have expected it to come back in 50% of the in at least 50% of the patients, not 20%. So this is why we should be doing this. So these kind of trials are very, very hard to run. Also, basically in every country except for America at the moment, cancer treatments are approved per cancer type, which is very, very problematic because cancer is actually thousands and thousands of different diseases. It's not, your family doctor might say 200 types of cancer or whatever. A good oncologist might say, well, maybe 600, 800 types, but really it's thousands. But certain treatments, particularly these adaptive cell therapies, these types of immunotherapy, they seem to work for all cancers, except for blood cancers, because you don't want, if you've got blood cancer, you don't want a cancer treatment made with your own blood necessarily. So let's imagine there was a small benefit from these treatments, but for loads and loads and loads of different cancers. Well, that's a massive thing. At the risk of using a vomit-inducing cliche, that's a game changer. Fortunately, the US are leading the way in this, as they often are. And in June this year, a medicine called Keytruda was approved for every cancer in adults. This is the first time in the history of the Federal Drug Administration. I believe it's the first time in the world. Now, Keytruda had been approved for a couple of, maybe 3 types of cancer over a year ago. But the results were so good in a very, very small number of patients, kind of 4% of cancer patients overall, but for lots of different types of cancer. And the researchers felt that it should be approved for all the cancers because there's a test you can do to see if it's going to work or not. And the test is basically a genetic test. So it's for a certain type of genetic defect called microsatellite instability. So if someone has cancer tumours that are called MSI high, microsatellite instability high, then this drug is very likely to work for them, and to give these kind of amazing results. Not adding a month to life, not adding 3 months to life, but adding a year or this kind of stuff, which is unheard of, right? With things like chemotherapy, yes, new chemotherapy agents are coming out, but the price of them is going up every time new ones come out. It's not going down like it should be. And also the improvements are getting smaller each time. These so-called incremental improvements. These immunotherapies like Keytruda, it's like double the life expectancy. It's a big deal. So hopefully we'll see these kind of changes happening where governments will work with the doctors and with the research scientists, and basically what they should do is write new guidelines for clinical trials for immunotherapy. So immunotherapy should really have different guidelines to the ones that you'd use for testing chemotherapy or surgery or radiation or whatever, because immunotherapy works in a very, very in a set of different ways. It's both complicated in that there's lots of stuff going on, and it's complex in that it's very hard to predict the outcomes just from little trials and things. But hopefully the world is changing. The EU have written clinical guidelines just for immunotherapy. I haven't really looked into them much yet, but I should be doing that soon. I didn't mean for this video to go on this long. I shall briefly just say, the donations keep coming in, which is amazing. I am so, so grateful for that. These donations are keeping me alive, I think. I have a strong reason to believe that. In particular, a few weeks ago I did run out of money, and it was at a time when I needed to buy a supply of medicine called dichloroacetate. This is a sort of potentially breakthrough cancer medicine. It changes the environment around the cancer cells, which allows the immune system to attack the cancer cells more easily. Cancer cells are usually protected by a layer of acid that's kind of continually forming because of the way that the cancer cells work, and this medicine inhibits that, so it stops that forming. And in my case, because I'm having the immunotherapy, it should help the immunotherapy work a lot. And it's quite expensive at the moment. If you get it from a proper medical supplier, you can buy it off eBay for almost no money at all, but that would probably kill you. But fortunately, the donations came. I am so grateful for that. So I managed to buy another 4 months supply of that medicine, which was over $1,000. So cheap compared to immunotherapy, but very expensive compared to aspirin or whatever. And it certainly costs the same price to make as aspirin, although that's a discussion for another day. So that's fantastic. Really appreciate that. Please do keep sharing my donation link because it really does make a difference. It's www.matthewdons.org. That's MATTHEWDONS.org. So yeah, that's just fantastic. If you can keep sharing that link, the donations will hopefully keep coming in, and I will live a bit longer. And yeah, I'm now in this kind of situation that only a few months was unimaginable. So there is a small but real chance that my current 6 treatments could cure my cancer. Really hard to even get my head around that. Very small chance, but possible. But there's another much greater kind of path of hope, as it were, which is it is possible that these 6 treatments could keep me alive longer and another treatment will come up. Now, as I mentioned possibly in a previous video, when I was talking to my immunotherapist just a few months ago about all the exciting new treatments coming up, one of the immunotherapists said that this new generation of immunotherapies called checkpoint inhibitors, there should be a huge wave of them coming soon, but he said, unfortunately, it won't be in time for me. And this is an immunotherapist who is incredibly aggressive about treating cancer, overly optimistic, in my opinion. He's Japanese, but he's spent a lot of time in the US in the top cancer places there. I think he was at MD Anderson, which is the world leader in cancer research and treatment. And he was saying they're not going to be in time for me. That has now changed now because, we're 7 months later or whatever it is. There now is a real possibility, if I can continue with my current treatments and they keep the cancer under control, there's a very, very real possibility that I'll be able to have new treatments in the future. I'm fit and healthy enough at the moment. It's possible. And that's just incredible, to be given this hope in such a bleak situation. It's amazing. So please keep the donations coming. If you can make a donation, that's great. If you can't, please share the link and please share this video. Obviously, it does make a huge difference to me. When people share the links on Facebook, I see the donations come in. It's that simple. And whenever anyone makes a donation, usually another donation comes in after that as well, because people see the updates. So it makes a huge difference. I'm so grateful for it. So thanks a lot for watching. This was going to be like 10 minutes long, and it's now like 27 minutes long. So that link again, www.matthewdons.org. That's MATTHEWDONS.org. Thanks a lot.